Louis is a billionaire and the owner of the largest clothing company in Korea. He is diligent in his job, and everyone fears him, and no one can keep up with him at work. His cousin Mari calls him, but he tells her that he does not love her and asks her to stop following him. On the other side, we see Shil, a poor girl lives in a small village, embracing her grandmother, who passed away a few moments ago, and she cries heartily. On this rainy night, Louis decides to go out for an important meeting. The servant warns him not to go out in such stormy weather, but he is determined. On her way back to Korea to search for her brother to tell him that his grandmother had passed away, Shil meets an old woman on the train who tells her that she is sick and needs some water. When Shil returns, she discovers that the woman has stolen her bag that contains all her money, even if it was little. She heads to the police station to report the matter, but the policeman tells her that he can do nothing. In this time, we see Jung, the manager of Louis' company, where he was on an important date. After leaving, he meets a poor girl. She offers him to buy some rare herbs. He looks at the herbs and knows that they are really rare, and he wonders why she wants to sell them for such a low price, so Shil tells him that she was robbed and she needs any money. So Jung takes the herbs from her for $100, then gives her his number telling her to contact him to take the rest of the money and leaves. On her way to search for her brother, Shil feels disappointed, but it quickly dissipates when she sees a vagrant person on the street wearing clothes similar to her brother's, so she runs towards him thinking that he is him, but she is surprised by a completely different person. And to the shock is that this person is Louis himself. Shil takes Louis to the police station to inform that he is wearing her brother's clothes, but Louis tells the officer that he does not know anything about what she is talking about. He is homeless and has lost his memory and does not remember anything completely. And because no evidence is found against him, the policeman takes him out. But Shil, who is still suspicious of him, follows him, and Louis swears he does not remember anything. The time after knowing the news of the mysterious death of her grandson Louis, the grandmother enters intensive care in a very difficult condition. Louis begs Shil to take him with her because he is tired of sitting on the street and promises her that he will remember everything within a few days. Feeling pity for him, Shil takes Louis and buys him food and then asks him to wait for her outside her workplace, which is Louis' company in which Shil works as a cleaning lady. But when the security men see Louis, they cannot identify him and kicks him out. Shil takes Louis to the sauna and takes a shower so that he becomes as clean as he was, and sleeps there because she does not have any money. Then Louis cries and tells her that he is tired of people hitting him in the street and asks her to promise not to leave him until he regains his memory, and Shil promises him. Then Shil thinks that the first thing she has to do is to call Jung to get her money, but unfortunately Jung drops his phone on the coffee and it is completely shut off and Shil cannot communicate with him. When he fixes his phone, he is surprised that Shil has not contacted him yet. But Shil finally sees him in the company, and she learns that he is the manager, so she falls unconscious from the shock. At this time, Louis makes a friendship with another poor young man, but he offers him to stay in a room on the roof of his simple house, and in return he will take a very little money from him, and Louis is very happy with this offer. But Shil wakes up in the hospital. She finds Jung next to her, and he gives her $4,000, the real price for her plant, so Shil thanks him and returns home, and she brings a lot of food for Louis. The next day, she takes him to buy a lot of clothes, and he asks her to buy him a phone, and Shil agrees. Then she goes to the police station to follow up the investigations searching for her brother. At this time, Mari is with her father, who is Louis' uncle, Sion, and she talks about Louis. So Sion remembers how he had given him a car that he had taken off its brakes so that Louis would have an accident and die, and he would get the company instead. As for Louis, Shil finds his name printed on his underwear, so she knows that this is his name. On her way to work, Louis tells her that her clothes are not good, then he puts a flower on the dress to make it more beautiful. When Shil goes to work, the employees are surprised that Jung has promoted her to work in one of the offices on probation because they suffer from a shortage of employees at the present time. The next day, Louis watches Strange Places on TV, but he remembers that he visited them before, and his head begins to ache and he feels tired, so Shil takes care of him all night, and in the morning Louis thanks her for last night. But Louis still remembers many things. Even when he sees his uncle in a TV interview, he remembers that he saw him before and decides to go with Shil to the company to ask him about his identity. That evening, Louis eats with Shil and tells her that when he can get money, he will buy her a lot of food. When Louis goes to the company with Shil, Jung sees him, but he does not recognize him because he never saw the owner of the company before, and Sion also sees him, but he quickly flees by car, trembling for fear of Louis's return, and after investigations, he discovers that Louis did not actually die, and that someone else died in his place. In the evening, Shil falls ill, and Louis takes care of her all night. He decides to drive her to the company in the morning to check on her, and Sion sees him again, but Louis ignores him, so Sion knows that he does not remember him, and it is clear that he has lost his memory, and he begins to think of a plan to get rid of him again. As for Louis, when he sees Jung's nice behavior with Shil in the company, he feels jealous, especially when Jung comes to her house and scolds for letting a stranger and a homeless person to stay with her. Louis grieves and asks Shil not to leave him, and she reassures him that she will never do so, but on contrary she starts to get closer to him. One day, Louis gets into an accident, and the car driver is Mari. When she sees Louis, she is shocked, but he leaves her and goes to Shil, who is determined to take him to the hospital, but he feels sad when they return for spending a lot of money in the hospital. But Shil tells him that he is more important to her. As for Mari, she goes to tell her father about Louis, and Sion gets nervous, then tells her that he has lost his memory, and she has to keep the matter a secret until the properties are transferred to him, and then she won't be forced to pretend that she loves him to get the money. Then Shil is with Louis and she sees a ring and she likes it very much, and Louis feels sad because he does not have the money to buy it for her, so he goes to get a job to get money, but he feels tired because he was not used to hard work before. Despite that, he manages to get money, and he buys her plenty of food, take her to the beach, and buy her new shoes, and when they get home, Louis leaves her to go buy her flowers, but some people come and kidnap him. Shil is worried about his delay and goes to inform her friend, the policeman, but he tells her everything, and it turns out that Louis's grandmother's assistant had seen him and was able to confirm his identity and knew that he is Louis. Then the policeman tells her that he has returned to his family. Shil is shocked and asks Jung how he did not recognize him, so he tells her that no one in the company had seen the CEO before. As for Louis, when the men take him to his grandmother, she tells him everything about himself, and she can't believe that he has returned, and she locks him in the house for fear of losing him again, and Louis begins to remember many things, and he loses consciousness. As for Shil, she feels happy for him, but she feels grief, especially when several days pass without him communicating with her, so her friend tells her that for sure, when he learned that he is rich, he decided to abandon her, but she was surprised by him after work, coming with flowers and confessing his love to her. Then he sends her many gifts and also to his friend, the owner of the house where he used to live. The policeman manages to access a surveillance camera at the scene of Louis's accident and discovers that her brother hit Louis and stole his car, but unfortunately he got into the accident and died instead of him. When Shil discovers the truth, she breaks down crying over her brother, then she fears that Louis will find out that her brother was a thief, so she quits her job and returns to her old village. As for Louis, when he asks his uncle why he didn't tell him his identity when he saw him before, Sion gets nervous and tells him that he thought he wasn't him. When Louis learns that Shil is gone, he turns into a very bad situation, but he manages to know her whereabouts, but Shil does not welcome him and refuses to tell him anything, and asks for separation. Louis returns to Korea in sadness, but on the way he gets into an accident and remembers everything, and that it was Shil's brother who died instead of him, and he remembers how Shil's brother was with a group of bandits who stopped Louis to take his car and before they hit him, Shil's brother defended him. When Louis was crossing the road, a car hit him and he lost his memory. Louis kept crying because he was the reason for the death of Shil's brother, but his sadness disappeared when he ran into him one day on the street. Louis runs to him hugging him, and Shil's brother tells him that he opposed his friends in stealing his car, so they left him and he did not ride with them, and they had an accident and they all died, but he survived. Louis feels that he is over the clouds with the return of Shil's brother. Louis takes Shil's brother to her and she is in shock that he is still alive. As for Sion, he feels guilty and decides to confess everything to Louis and swears to him that he did not intend to kill him, but only wanted to get injured so that he would take charge of the company, and Louis forgives him. The drama ends with Louis deciding to make his friend, the owner of the house, his driver and buy him a bigger and better house. He then invites Shil to eat at their old house, and when she lifts the lid, she is surprised by a ring and Louis proposes to her. This is all for today's drama. Thank you for watching and see you next time.